Welcome to another episode of Kitchen Counseling. I love pizza, so I have had just get on the ball here and find a very simple, easy recipe for you to make that just tastes fantastic. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to make the pizza dough, and then it's going to have to rise for about 30 minutes. While it's rising, we're going to do some of the ingredients and put all the toppings together and all that kind of stuff. So I'll explain that later on as we're going along. Right now I just want to talk about the dough, because you can make this ahead of time, and once it's all done, you can actually freeze this dough, put it in the freezer, and when you're ready to use it, just thaw it out, and then you got the dough already made. You don't have to do this part of the process. So the first step in the process is making the dough. We're going to start with 1 cup of bread flour. I use bread flour because I like a crispier dough. If you want a chewier dough, you would use all-purpose flour. But I personally go with the bread flour. So we're gonna put in 1 package of instant yeast, rapid rise yeast. That way you don't have to mix it with the water, and you don't have to wait around and let it rise for a long, long time. And then I've got a blend of sugar, salt, garlic powder, basil, and oregano. And I'll give you the quick ingredients, the amounts on each one of those. We have 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. We have 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. We have 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon of basil leaves, and 1/4 teaspoon of oregano. And we're going to put that all into this dry mixture. So now you have all your dry ingredients together. The next step in the process is we're going to add the olive oil. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I have 3/4 cup of warm water. And I'm going to add most of that. I'm going to hold off on a little bit of that. And we're just going to kind of start stirring it together in the bowl. Right now it's kind of all really runny. But now as it starts to grab some of that flour, it starts to form. It's just going to make a small little dough. We're just making 1 pizza. We're mixing that up. Pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to mix this up in the bowl just to kind of get it. It's going to be kind of sticky, but we're going to kind of get it together to where we can then put it out on the counter with some flour on the counter and knead it a little bit and get it into a nice little round dough ball. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. This is where we're at right now. This is what it looks like. It's pretty sticky right now. And we'll come right back and I'll have the counter set up to finish it off. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We're back. Okay, I've changed my mind. We're not going to put it all over the counter. I've done that and flour it all up, make a nice big mess. We're going to actually do this in the bowl. So I'm going to show you how to do this, kind of contain it a little bit. So the first steps, we added 1 cup of flour. We added the salt and the sugar and all the spices. 3/4 cup of water, and the olive oil. What I'm going to do is I have another cup of flour, and I'm going to add this a little bit at a time, and then we're just going to mix it in, because it is really, really sticky right now, because it's really heavy on the water. We're basically going to get it to where we can actually take it out of here, and then we can actually manipulate it with our hands. So we're just adding water and flour to get our consistency. And so right now, this is where we're looking at. It's starting to come together good. I'm going to keep adding some flour to it. The mixture, if you run out a little bit, the water, everything is just, as you know, a recipe is a guideline. That's what you're starting with. You might need a little bit more water or flour depending on temperature, depending on humidity, depending on what's going on in your region or where you're working from. So we're going to make it a little bit different as we go along, but these are your general rules of thumb. Now this is starting to really get where I like it here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do a little quick wash up because I'm going to use my hands now. All right, we're back. I had to wash up, get a little bit of flour here. I am going to end up doing this because it's just what I'm comfortable doing. It's the way I've always made the pizzas. The bowl technique works for a lot of people, and if that's for you, go for it. For me, I got to put it right on the counter. So still really, really soft. So it still needs some flour. We still have some leftover flour from our 2 cups of flour that we originally put together. And I'm just mixing it. This is how I learned how to make pizzas when I was a kid. So you're just doing a little bit of a kneading process. You're putting the flour, I can feel the consistency of the dough change. Eventually what we're going to do is it's not going to be sticky at all. And you want to knead that dough until it's as smooth as a baby's butt. How smooth is a baby's butt? At least that's what my grandfather told me I needed to do when I was making the pizzas. And I find that as you're kneading it, you'll find it's kind of rough, it's a little rough around the edges. You'll still feel a little stickiness inside, so it's not quite there yet. As you keep adding the flour, we've added all the water. There's enough water in it. We don't need to add any more. We're just trying to take the extra stickiness out of it at this point. It smells really good. You can smell the seasoning you put in it. The garlic powder's coming out, the basil's coming out, the oregano's coming out, the olive oil that's in it already is coming out. And we're going to do a little, next step is we're going to actually put it in this bowl and roll it around in olive oil so the whole outside is covered with olive oil. Almost there, I can feel it. It's getting nice and soft, but it's consistent all the way through. Many years ago, when I was a much younger man, I used to do pizza parties once a year, and I'd make the pizza dough from scratch, make all the pizza sauce from scratch. This is a nice little 2 cups that we're dealing here. I would do 25 pounds of flour, make 30 plus pizzas. This was my workout. I didn't have to go to the gym. I got my arm workout just doing this. All right. So we have something that's pretty smooth. That's what we're looking for at this point. We're going to go ahead and roll it around in the bowl. I've already put a little bit of olive oil in here, and I just brushed the oil so it's all around the sides. Okay, so you have a nice little shimmer of the olive oil on there. And we have our dough ball. So what we're going to do with this now is I'm going to leave it in the bowl with the olive oil. I'm going to put some saran wrap over the top, and we're going to let it sit probably about 30 minutes. Give the give the yeast some time to start to rise. While that's going on, I'll start working on some other things, so I'll be right back and we'll talk about the next steps, okay? Okay, we're back. Our dough here, I'm gonna show you, we'll take this off. Now it has risen, about doubled in size. And that's about 30 minutes of rising. So then what you're supposed to do is gently deflate it. I have a hard time with the gentle sometimes. I gotta get the impressions out. And then you're gonna put it on a floured surface, and we're gonna just knead it a little bit. Not a whole lot. Just making it smooth. Just a few times. It feels really good. It feels like it's really nice together. And then what I usually do, at this point, you're wanting to stretch it out. You can use a rolling pin if you like, or you can just use your hands. I tend to like the little bit more rustic look, so I like to use my hands and then just stretch and pull. Need a little bit more flour here. Now, if you're really good, you can flip it up in the air and do the spinning. I'm not that good. Every time I try and do that, I either catch it and put a hole in it, or I miss it and it goes on the floor. So I'm letting gravity just kind of open it up for me a little bit. Put a little bit more flour down here so it won't stick. The nice thing about working with dough, I did this a little fast and I ripped it. It's easy to mend. So I'm looking for just about a 12-inch round. It'll give it a nice little crust. It won't be super thin, but it's not going to be real extra thick either. Okay. And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's what I like about the rustic. Okay, we're going to transfer this onto, I put just a little cookie sheet here because we're going to put it on a pizza stone in the oven, which I've got warming up. And this is going to help us slide it onto the pizza stone. A little bit extra of all that flour there to help it slide nice and easy. There we go, just like that. I'll usually use my fingers just to kind of around the side, just kind of give it a little pinch so you have a little bit of a crust. I'm going to do a little drizzle of olive oil just around the whole pizza, and I'm going to brush it in so the whole dough gets kind of covered with that nice olive oil. It'll help brown it, it'll also give it the flavor that you're looking for. And that's your dough. One last step, I need a fork. Excuse me here. Because we're throwing this in an oven and we're not going to be able to kind of move it and watch it around, you want to poke it with some holes, especially in the middle, so it doesn't bubble up too much and just gets everything falls out. All right, so that's your basic pizza dough. On a later show, we're going to do pizza with the pizza sauce, and we're going to do all the different toppings and all that. At this point, you would just put your toppings on it and stick it in the oven. We're going to cook it for about 12 to 13 minutes on about 450 degrees in our oven. Again, you're going to watch it. You know, you want to make sure it might take a little bit longer, a little bit less.